Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. And every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you can find us here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Oh, and tonight, tonight we're going to have Cindy Sheehan, who's a political activist and a candidate for governor.
Hello.
Cindy, how are you? I was just making your introduction here. I was having a heart attack. I thought
you said 5 o'clock, and it's 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. Usually we call like 2 minutes to 5. Okay. So we have with us tonight, we're live on the air, by the way. Okay. We have with us here tonight political activist and next governor for the great state of California, Cindy Sheehan. Cindy, can you give us a little background, a little bio on yourself, and how you got into politics and how you find yourself here today?
Well, first of all, good evening. I'm not a political activist, I don't think, and I don't think I'm in politics, exactly. It's kind of a fine line. It's a distinction, I think, that is very critical because I believe I'm an activist. I think that I'm a peace and social justice activist. And I ran into Chris Daly, who used to be on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and his family are the scions of Daly City up here in Northern California. And he's a Democrat, but he's very left-leaning, very left-wing Democrat, which is weird. They should all be left-wing, but we know they're not. And so he said, Cindy, as long as you remain an activist, you'll be okay. You'll be on the right path. And so my reasons for running for office, and that's, I run for office, and I do that because I'm hoping that it gives a chance for the message to get out in a wider way. A lot of people just pay attention during elections. They really don't pay attention most of the time. Elections are just one day a year and the run up to the election. But it seems like the presidential election is never ending at this point. But my son was killed in Iraq, and in 2004, and even though I was against the war, he was against the war. Our entire family was against what was happening. I wasn't an anti-war activist, mostly because I didn't know. I didn't know where the events were, where the protests were. I wasn't plugged into that community. But after he was killed, I
wanted to ask you, Cindy. Now, before your son enlisted, did you try and talk him out of it? Were you left-leaning back then? Were you anti-war back then?
Yes. So was he. And we did try to talk him out of it, but he enlisted in 2000, and it was just very weird because we're not a military family. But, we were always a working-class poor family. And so he felt like he needed to join the military to get his education benefits. He had already been in college for 3 years. He earned his AA degree in theater arts. And so to go further, he felt, and plus he was always a really, a kid who felt great responsibility to the community. He was an Eagle Scout. He was literally an altar server at Mass until he graduated from high school, and he was 18. Then he did other things, usher, Eucharistic minister. He taught CCD. He just really was that kind of a kid. So, he felt like it would be some way to serve his country, and then by the time he got out, have, education credits. And so, of course, I grew up during the Vietnam War, and Casey's dad is a little bit older than me, 4 years older, so he was even more immersed in that. He tried to enlist, but they wouldn't take him because he had high blood pressure. He tried to enlist in the Air Force because he knew he was going to be drafted into the Army. And so, anyway, yeah, we weren't thrilled with the decision, but he was 21 years old. And when we saw that he was determined to do it, then, what are you going to do? We love our children. And if they're not doing anything that's hurting somebody else, potentially, then we're going to support them.
And do you have any other children?
I have 3 other children.
Okay. And none of them enlisted, correct?
Oh, gosh, no.
Yeah. Well, he sounds like a really great kid. People shouldn't realize that to become an Eagle Scout is a huge undertaking. And you have to do like a big civic, community service kind of a program that you have to design yourself, like Eagle Scouts, become president of the United States, they become senators. It's not an easy task to become an Eagle Scout, so that's very, very impressive to me.
Quite an accomplishment. And his Eagle Project was planting 1,200 trees up in the Angeles forest to help with reforestation.
Right. And that would be no simple or easy undertaking for an adult with a staff to do. And here you have a kid. I couldn't do it. I couldn't pull it off right now. I can tell you that. So God bless him, man. And you said he was active in his church and stuff like that as well.
Yes.
Well, you have my condolences, Cindy. It's just heartbreaking, and it's tragic that any parent would ever have to lose a child, especially in a situation of such an unjust, illegitimate war, senseless and useless on every level. So, but now were you a leftist before that, or politically?
Leftist. I was a Democrat, so I considered myself left, but now I know that that's not necessarily true. But we were, I think we were pretty politically progressive. We were, especially here in our community. My ex-husband, when Prop 8, the anti-gay marriage proposition, he actively campaigned against it, and so then he was still involved in the Catholic Church. He was a member of Knights of Columbus, and when Knights of Columbus, donated money to defeat Prop 8, my ex-husband left, and I gave him a lot of credit for that. So yeah, we were always, I think, pretty liberal. I would probably call us liberals, and that's kind of sort of left-wing Democrat. But of course, after Casey was killed, and I left the Democratic Party because I realized they were also the war party and the party of Wall Street, then I would consider myself now a radical, not a leftist or progressive or liberal or anything like that. It's just weird because to me the labels don't make sense anymore.
I totally agree with you. Because even I started, I guess, my political life as a teenager with the Yippies in New York City, the Youth International Party. So I was pretty radical out there. Yeah, I think. But then the definitions nowadays are just so bizarre and so crazy and redefined. Like people calling Obamacare socialism.
Right.
Where the poor would be forced to pay medical insurance to rich insurance companies, and they call that socialism. Right. And they get away with it.
Right.
So you're right.
And also they call Hillary liberal, Hillary Clinton. I'm like, if she's liberal, what does that make me?
Yeah.
I'm not even on the charts if that lady's a liberal.
Well, I have trouble with Chavez and Castro, okay? So, I'm a whole other story. But I understand what you're getting at.
I think Chavez was he liked to talk about socialism of the 21st century, which is democratic socialism, which isn't anywhere near Marxism or even Cuban socialism.
Right.
So, he was trying to balance capitalism and socialism, but towards the end of his life, he was realizing that wasn't working.
Well, we'll get into the whole Venezuela story as time goes on. I want to really get into your life because we have a lot of time tonight, and I really appreciate you coming on. I want to thank you because I've always been a big supporter of your work out there and your struggle out there. And I totally messed up. We were scheduled a few weeks back, but I had some personal problems in my life, and I totally got distracted and messed up the scheduling. And it was all my fault. And we had you booked. Mm-hmm. And I actually scrambled at the last minute to locate somebody else. And I got Lorenzo Irvin, who was a former member of the Black Panther Party. I booked him like 10 seconds before the show because I thought we screwed up. So I really apologize, Cindy.
Well, that's okay. And 2 hours is really a long time for me.
It's for me too. I had a really rough day.
Like to much more than a half hour. So we'll see how my voice holds up. I just got back from Los Angeles, and it was really smoggy and the fires, and it my throat swelled up and stuff like that.
I hear you. Listen, if you have to bail out, don't worry about me. I'll carry on the fight. I'll carry on the struggle.
I'll go as long as I can.
Thank you, Cindy. Now, so now you decided to protest the war in Iraq by camping out next to Bush's supposed ranch down there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did that come about? You just thought this up on your own? You just went down there on your own? You had a team? How'd you pull that off?
Well, I was at home one day. Let's see. It was August 3rd. I was at home watching TV. I was rarely home, and I rarely had the TV on. But I would always have the TV on while I was doing work, writing, or networking online or whatever. That was before Facebook and Twitter. Camp Casey happened before Facebook and Twitter. And so George Bush comes on the TV, and he was in Texas. He was at he was already on vacation. So he was at some kind of fundraiser or something was happening. And one of the 12 Marines from an Ohio Reserve unit were killed in Iraq that day. And so Bush was asked about it. And then Bush said, well, their families and the families of all of the loved ones of everybody killed in Iraq can rest assured that their loved ones died for a noble cause. And so my ears picked up when he said that. And I waited for any of the press there. I didn't know that the White House press corps followed the president wherever he went, even on vacation to Crawford, Texas. And I thought they probably followed him when he made, state visits or whatever. But I was waiting because it was a press conference, so I was waiting for one of the people of the press to say, well, what's a noble cause? Can you define that? And nobody did. So I was thinking, I have a voice. Why don't I go and try to ask him? And it just happened that the very next day, August 4th, I was flying to Dallas, and I was going to be one of the keynote speakers at the Veterans for Peace convention. They have an annual national convention, and it was in Dallas that year. And so I knew that Crawford was in Texas, but I didn't really know where it was in Texas. And I knew that I was scheduled to speak on Friday at the VFP conference. So I sent an email out to my, connections. I had about 400 people on my email list at that point. And I said, you know what? George Bush just said that Casey and everybody that died in Iraq died for a noble cause. None of the none of the so-called news people there ask him what noble cause, I said, I'm going to Texas anyway. I'm speaking at the Veterans for Peace conference on Friday. Saturday, I'm going to rent a car and I'm going to drive to Crawford, Texas, wherever that is. And I'm going to try to get up to George Bush and ask him what noble cause. And so I did that. I sent that email out. I went to an event in Sacramento, and I called my sister on the way because she was going to meet me in Dallas. We both, we co-founded an organization called Gold Star Families for Peace, and she lives down in LA. I live up near Sacramento. So we were meeting in Dallas. I said, you know what? On Saturday, we're going to drive to Crawford, Texas, and we're going to ask George Bush what noble cause. And she's like, okay, because she does anything I tell her to. And she didn't do that when we were little, but she does now. And then I called a friend of mine who has a lot of press connections, and I said, I sent her the email. I said, could you send that out to the press for me? And she said, sure. And then I called a really good friend of mine at the time, and I told him, and he goes, oh, you're going to be so disappointed. Don't do it. It's going to be terrible. He won't meet with you and blah, blah, blah. And I said, of course he won't meet with me, but at least maybe it'll bring attention to because at that point the anti-war movement was virtually dead. There was no energy for peace because we had just gone through the horrible 2004 elections when George Bush was reelected and all this stuff. And so I said, but I'm going to be in Texas anyway. I might as well go try, and we're going to send out a press release. And so I got home from Sacramento that night after I had my event in Sacramento. My mailbox was filled. I had 1,000 emails, and I had AOL at the time, and they would only let you have 1,000 1,000 messages in your inbox. And the needless to say, the response was extraordinary. And one of the emails I got was from Hadi Jawad. He was one of the founders of the Crawford Peace House, and he's Cindy. The Crawford Peace House is there for you. Whatever you need, we will be at the Veterans for Peace Convention in Dallas. So let's sit down and talk about it. And so, are you still there, Ed?
Yeah, I'm fascinated.
Going on and on. And so when I got to the convention, needless to say, it was the buzz of the convention. The whole convention wanted to leave Saturday and go with me to Crawford, which turns out to be about 2.5 hours outside of Dallas and about 2 hours the other way outside of Austin. So it's kind of in between Austin and Dallas. But anyway, I met with Hadi Jawad from the Crawford Peace House. I met with the president of Veterans for Peace and some other Texas activists. And my sister was there. And so we were sitting around talking about the action of going Saturday, caravanning down to Crawford and, meeting at the Crawford Peace House and then going because they know exactly where the ranch is. They know the route to get there and everything because they'd been there. I didn't even know there was a Crawford Peace House until I did this. And so they have been protesting George Bush ever since he became president. So I was sitting there and we were chatting with these activists, and Hadi goes, what are you going to do if George Bush doesn't meet with you? And I hadn't really thought about it at that point. I said, well, I guess I'll just sit down in the road and say I'm not going to move until he meets with me. And Hadi looks at me and he goes, wow, that's an action. And so this was all the preparation we had. Ed, people like the right wing want to accuse me of, having all of this money behind me, like George Soros, Michael Moore, whatever. But that's not what happened. So we went on Saturday, and VFP, they had their business meeting, and they said, Cindy, you're like destroying our business meeting. Everybody wants to go with you. And so there was an impeachment bus that I rode on, and 12 veterans went. And then all the other veterans that went with me, they were like, well, you can't really tell us what to do. We're grown-ups. And so I think about on that day, we had about 80 people who met at the Crawford Peace House. And then we caravanned to a place we could park. And then we walked up the road towards the ranch, and the cops stopped us. We only got about a quarter mile, and the cops stopped us. And so we turned back to where there was shade, and I sat there. And the first night we had 7 people. We were sitting in lawn chairs. We had an ice chest filled with water, and we had one of those 5-gallon paint buckets to use
as a
for
bathroom.
a toilet.
Oh, no.
And that's what we had. And by the end of the summer, we had about 18,000 people come out to Crawford. Tens of thousands of people around the world did solidarity events with us. It became a media circus. And so that's how it started. That's the idea. And it was just like a spur of the moment thing. I was thinking it as I was typing on my computer, and that's what Camp Casey, that's how it happened. And it was very miraculous. I was having some problems the other day, and one of my Camp Casey friends, who's also my Facebook friend, and we don't call him Camp Casey friends, we call him Camp Casey family. He just said, Cindy, put the Camp Casey spirit into it. You remember when we needed ice, we'd be thinking we need ice, and an ice truck would drive up, or we'd be thinking we need a food to feed all these people who are camping here. And then, 50 pizzas would be delivered. So yeah, it was that's just the way it was. We didn't want for anything. If we wanted a tent would come. If we needed, canopies would come. And like I said, this wasn't in the days that you had a smartphone that you could put out on Facebook or Twitter, and it would happen. I was blogging once a day, and it would go out on the Daily Kos and HuffPo and Truth Out and, some other things like that. But we would just actually literally be standing around, thinking talking that we needed something, and it would come. And then some people came from all over the country. One day these people came up to me and they said, we just really wanted to meet you and bring you some money, and we have to go now. I said, oh, you're not staying? And they're like, no, we just drove down from Madison, Wisconsin, and we really have to get back home. People came from Australia. It was just really a wonderful experience. And we call it the first post 9/11 Occupy movement.
Let me ask you a question. How long were you camped out there?
Well, we stayed the first summer. We started August 6th and we ended August 31st. And we said we were going to be there as long as Bush was there. And Bush had decided, Bush was supposed to be there till Labor Day weekend. But then Katrina happened. So the Hurricane Katrina. So he left on August 31st. And we packed up all of our leftover supplies, toilet paper, paper towels, gallons and gallons of water. I think they figured out it was 5 tons of leftover food, and other kinds of things you need for a big camp. And we put it on the impeachment bus that I rode into Crawford on, and a couple trucks, and we took it down to New Orleans. And we were, Camp Casey, those responders were like some of the first people that got through to be able to help the people who were stranded and things like that with supplies. And then we took 3 RVs, and we took busloads of activists throughout the country. We had 3 different routes, and we all ended up in Washington, D.C. for a big anti-war protest. I think it was September 23rd of 2005, and there were hundreds of thousands of people there at that anti-war protest. But then I said we were going to come back anytime George Bush went to Crawford. So we went back Thanksgiving, Easter, and then the Board of Supervisors of McClellan County, that where Crawford is, they passed these laws that they called the Cindy Sheehan ordinances, where you couldn't camp in the ditches, because we were literally camping in bar ditches. You couldn't camp by the side of the road or sit by the side of the road or eat by the side of the road. So when they did that, I just bought some property. And
really?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And then, but a lot of our family, our Camp Casey family, would get arrested testing those ordinances, and we took it to the Texas Supreme Court, and they were actually ruled unconstitutional.
Okay, we got about 3 minutes to the break. Now, when you guys were up there doing your sit-in, did you have like infiltrators and provocateurs slip in and cause trouble?
Well, I'm not sure. So
how about
I was too busy.
Right.
You know, I was like constantly being interviewed or doing meetings or events and things like that. So, but there had to have been, because some days we would have 800 people there. And like I said, by the end of the summer, 18,000 people had come through. But I'm not sure. It was just too crazy the first summer to have anything like that happen. I know that MoveOn.org came and they tried to get me to support some bills in Congress that I could not support. They were like, get out of Iraq one of these days, if it's okay with George Bush or something like that. And so MoveOn really tried to funnel the energy of Camp Casey into the Democratic Party, into electing Democrats. And we kind of went that way for the 2006 elections. But after that, my ties were totally broken with MoveOn or the Daily Kos or anything that was more democratic than anti-war.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into that trap because it's so seductive. They make you think that that they really mean what they're going to do.
Well, they all promised me.
I know.
Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, all those leading Democrats. They said, Cindy, if you help us get the House of Representatives back, we'll help you end the wars. And they knew the power of that movement, and they used the power of that movement, and then they betrayed us.
Oh, boy. We have with us tonight Cindy Sheehan, candidate for governor, 2014. You can find her website, got it right here, Cindy Sheehan Soapbox at blogspot.com and cindy2014.org. I'm sure she needs donations. We'll be right back after this break with more Cindy Sheehan. She's the author of several books. I got the links up on my blog, The Opperman Report. You can go there and find the links to her book. Several books she wrote, and I got them all there. One is Not One More Mother's Child, Revolution, a Love Story, and I Left My Marbles in San Francisco. We'll be right back with the national treasure, Cindy Sheehan. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And then the show is rebroadcast. We just cut a deal with Capricorn Radio, and all our shows are going to be rebroadcast on awakeradio.us during the week. You can also find the YouTube archives of this show on the Opperman Report YouTube channel. And we have tonight with us a real American treasure, Cindy Sheehan. She's the mother of a soldier, Casey Sheehan, and she's also running for governor. She's going to be the next governor of the state of California on the Peace and Freedom Party. And you can find her at cindysheehansoapbox.blogspot.com and cindysheehan2014.org to donate to her campaign. Cindy, now you were part of this amazing spontaneous groundswell event, historic event. Now, what do you think? What is your take? I want to hear your opinion on what you think about this Bundy Ranch situation. And does it pass your sniff test, your smell test? What do you think?
Oh gosh, I'm glad you don't want to get too controversial or anything tonight. Oh God, how can I say this? What do you mean? Does it pass my sniff test?
Well, would you like to hear my opinion?
Well, I would love to hear yours.
Well, nobody wants to hear my opinion. They want to hear you. Okay? They can hear me ramble on the subway platform. Okay?
I can understand not liking the government. Okay? I share that feeling for sure. But to me it's like the wrong cause to rally around. I think, this guy never really owned the land. We find out they didn't even go there till the 50s. He's trying to sponge off the government, but then he's so racist about black people and their situation. I didn't really get like that much into it, but I can't. I'm searching for. I'm floating around here, really not saying that much about something, but no, it didn't really pass my sniff test. And
well, let me ask you this.
Yeah,
I'm gonna throw you a little lifeline here.
Yeah, please do.
But be careful. It could be
here.
It could be an anvil. Okay, that I'll throw you. Now, you were out there, at in a camp, the same kind of thing, a camp of protesters, a camp of guys, resistance type people. Now, what do you think would have happened to your group if a bunch of guys with guns showed up to help your cause?
It wouldn't have. In fact, we had the opposite. We had, armed men and horses come out to rally against us, and it would have been a disaster if we, if a situation arose like that.
So you think if at Camp Casey, if you guys were there armed, you think you would have been put down pretty quickly?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that we would have been slaughtered. But the thing is that you're on. It said Revolution Radio.
Yeah,
I'm a revolutionary, but I don't think that the violence comes from the revolution. It comes from the counter-revolution. And so our whole thing is that we don't think that an answer to violence is violence. We believe in self-defense, but I don't believe that was self-defense, what was happening at Bundy Ranch.
Okay. Do you believe it's a spontaneous gathering?
I really haven't looked into it that much, but I really would like to know your take on it because it is interesting.
Well, right out the box, again, I'm a resistance guy from way back, and I got my head beat in as a teenager, protesting in the streets of New York City. So I think my street cred is there. Okay, if you want to see the lumps in my head and the scars, and ask around about me, so I can see resisting against the government. Now, Mr. Bundy has $1 million worth of cows.
Right.
Every day across this country, women, children, and their husbands and their little families and their little kids get evicted from their apartments, and all their belongings are thrown out on the curb, including the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches from their fridge, thrown out in the curb like garbage, like trash. So if these people want to pick up guns and defend homesteaders and people from being evicted from their homes, Mr. Bundy can go sell a couple of these cows and move to an apartment someplace. Okay? But I think that people need to stand up and resist these evictions
right.
of people that are families with children that are being thrown out in the street.
That was one of my Facebook status updates that I put.
That's where I read it.
Yeah.
I said it before I read it there. I've been saying that for a while. But again, I see, and I have trouble seeing this as some kind of a spontaneous gathering, and that they're not being put down. I think if this was a legitimate uprising of armed people, the government would put them down swiftly.
Oh, absolutely. And then they're riding it. Bundy rides around with an American flag on his horse, and he supposedly hates this country or the government, I guess. But yeah, I tend to agree with you mostly about that. It was a weird kind of thing that just kind of blew over. But now I understand that some of the people who came are setting up roadblocks and checking people's IDs.
Yeah, who knows? Because I'm sure there was a lot of misinformation in the press about your action that was out there.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, so that's why I want to get your opinion, because you were there in the thick of it.
Right. I can't really I check the source of my information, and then I double check and triple check to see, if things could be credible. So, there was there still is tons of misinformation about me and about Camp Casey and what was happening there. And the thing is, it's because people have actually written about it in books. These two ladies wrote a book they're both in Northern California, right-wingers. And they said that we had an air-conditioned catering tent for the press. And I'm going, well, where the heck was that? I would have been in there. It was like 110 degrees outside, So they're acting like it was a big media setup, and it wasn't something that was spontaneous and genuine. And Rush Limbaugh even said my story was made up, like that Bill Burkett guy who supposedly made up some stories about George Bush and his National Guard things. How do you make up a story about your child dying?
Yeah, that's criminal. That's criminal. And even, something I just doing some research for the show, I was reading up on your Wikipedia page, and even that's snarky. They have a snarky attitude. I mean, listen, no matter what your politics are, or what my politics are, this woman sacrificed, she gave up her son, okay? And people should have respect for that. This is what do you call it, a Gold Star family, you called it?
Right. There's Gold Star mothers, and they're kind of right-wing and pro-war. So we started something called Gold Star Families for Peace, because it's not just the mothers that suffer. The mothers suffer, in a special way, but the entire family, the brothers, the sisters, the father, the aunts and uncles, I'm not going to go through all of the different relationships, but it's a terrible, terrible thing. And I was listening to a book today, and they're talking about this. I listen to fiction when I walk. It's the only time I have a chance to, just kind of escape a little bit. And so I'm listening to this book, and this kid's like, well, he was only 12. He's like, I don't want to die. I have, so much life to live, and I don't want to be in the grave, cold in the grave for so long. And I'm just thinking, well, damn it, that's what happened to Casey. He was killed when he was 24. He missed getting married, being a father, whatever, the joys and the sorrows of being alive and living to an old age. And it just really angers me. It angers me that so many people, their lives, their countries, their communities have been destroyed because of this empire. And it just my son's been dead 10 years, but I don't think I'm ever going to get over that anger that nobody is being held accountable for these deaths and for the destruction. And not only is nobody being held accountable, but it continues.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's continued under Barack Obama. So now you're of the opinion right now that there's no difference whatsoever between Democrats and Republicans.
Absolutely. And I think Barack Obama might be worse than George Bush.
So do I. Okay, I agree with you there. Yeah. Okay, now, but now, do you define yourself as a socialist?
Yes.
Okay. Now, were you a socialist before? When did you become a socialist?
I ran against Nancy Pelosi in 2008 in San Francisco, and my platform, because I wasn't independent, I didn't have a party platform to follow, but we wrote a platform with the help of the community. You know, we had long meetings with labor leaders and community activists and all sorts of different activism, from LGBTQ, anti-war, and homeless activism, all kinds of different people, marijuana, legalized prostitution.
Everybody.
We met with everybody, and we even gave some people these offices in our office if they were running campaigns. And so we wrote this platform, and it was really socialist. It was single payer healthcare. It was we had a labor platform that was very pro worker. It was hailed from all over the world. Education that's free from preschool to university. Of course, peace, and using the money that's spent on empire for social programs and peaceful means at home. So I looked at my platform and I realized that it was very socialist. And there's a party in California called the Peace and Freedom Party, and they're a socialist party. And many of the people from all over the Bay Area, not just San Francisco, worked on my campaign, and they helped us with the platform. And so after the election, I was with some of the people of the party, and they convinced me they showed me the platform of the party, and they showed me the goals of the party and everything, and the mission statement. And so I agreed with it. And so I re-registered from Decline to State, which is politically independent in California, to the Peace and Freedom Party. And then and of course, after I met with Hugo Chavez the first time.
Oh, you did?
Oh, many times I met with Hugo Chavez.
Well, I'm very jealous, I tell you.
Yeah, many times I met with him. In 2006, at the beginning of 2006 was the first time I met him. And I came home from California, and I came home from Caracas, and I was like thoroughly attacked from all different political spectrums for meeting with him. I even got summoned to, Queen Ariana Huffington's house to be read the Riot Act for meeting with Hugo Chavez. And I thought he was a great guy. And so I thought I better do some studying about what he was doing and what socialism was about. And the more I got into, and this was in 2006, so the more I got into it, the more relieved I felt that my meeting with him was justified, and I felt what he was doing in Venezuela was wonderful. And not only did I feel it was wonderful, I was jealous. I wanted that in the United States. And that's why I'm running for governor, because I want it in California.
Well, let me ask you a question now. How would you fund these programs? Because Chavez was able to nationalize the oil industry in Venezuela, but you wouldn't be able to do that in California, would you?
Well, it wasn't fully nationalized. It was only partially nationalized. But, yes, he diverted some oil revenue into these social programs. And there's so many ways that you can fund these programs. And I don't think in the United States or California that it is a problem with resources. What it is, it's a problem of where those resources are allocated. And in the United States, they're mostly allocated towards the war of terror. I call it the war of terror. And the police state, national insecurity. So over 50% of the revenues we have go towards these things. We spend trillions of dollars a year on these programs, where China, the largest country in the world, only spends $100 billion on their military industrial complex. I mean, on their military. And how much do we spend? We don't even know how much we spend, because a lot of it goes to black ops. A lot of it that should be like the nuclear program is under a different department than the Department of War, and the aid to like Israel and other countries, it's really military aid, goes through the State Department. So we don't really even know how much we spend. We have over 1,000 bases around the world. Those could be closed. We could easily fund single-payer healthcare, education. We need to forgive student loans, and we need to stop foreclosures and evictions, and we need to stop being in service to Wall Street and to the war machine. In California, a lot of our money goes towards a prison industrial complex. A lot of our money goes towards giving subsidies to oil companies and other corporations. And so that money could be reallocated to education. Plus, California sends $65 billion a year to the federal government for the war on terror. And I kind of played with some figures once on the National Priorities Project, and I funded all the programs I wanted to, and I still had money left over. So it's just a matter of allocation, and it's not a matter of not having the money. It's going towards supporting the 1% where it should be going towards supporting 100%.
I always thought if we took the 1% and we doubled their taxes, okay, the rest of us would have to pay no tax. But once we double their taxes, because all the money that gets filtered through taxes goes back to them anyway, right. They would be motivated to cut down all that waste and corruption that's in the government to begin with. Now, it seems like such a simple proposition, Cindy. Who wouldn't want free health care? Who wouldn't want free medical care? You would think that every person who's listening to this would agree with this, right? Why do you think people can't catch on to that? Why do you think people want to bow down to their masters and have the billionaires get more money, but they hate the poor and the unfortunate?
It's so sad. It's just really. I wrote a book that was just an ebook, and it's called Myth America: The 20 Greatest Myths of the Robber Class and the Case for Revolution. And this was before Occupy. So I called the robber class was the 1%, the military, their military, their
political lackeys,
their media, the police, and everything that props the 1% up. That's the robber class. And so the rest of us must be in the robbed class. And my whole thesis is they only rob us because we let them. And why do we let them? Because we have been conditioned our whole lives to believe certain myths. We're supposed to believe the myth that the United States is the greatest country in the universe. Not just on this planet, not just in history, but the universe. We're conditioned to believe if the United States goes to war, then it's a good war. And if something happens that is really terrible, like maybe like the My Lai massacre or Fallujah, that's an aberration. These are the things that we're conditioned. We're conditioned to the fact that there's a difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. We're conditioned to the fact that elections matter, that our votes count. We're even conditioned from the time we can be conditioned that we live in a democracy, and nothing could be further from the truth. So what we have to do, and it's like this huge job, is we have to break these myths. We have to be myth busters. We have to like really bring people to reality. And why people don't want free health, they don't want a better healthcare system, is because they're being told that we have the best healthcare system in the world, where again, nothing could be further from the truth. Cuba has a better healthcare system than we do. They have a higher life expectancy than we do here in the United States. So we have one of the worst healthcare systems in the world. And why wouldn't people want free education? Because I worked my way through school. They can work their ways through school. But it hasn't always been that way. It was free here in California when I got out of school. It's free around the world or highly subsidized. So, and also we're conditioned to think that the wealthy, the 1% or the robber class, they're jobs creators, they're hard workers. And, if we take some money from them, the jobs are going to go.
Ooh, we can't take money from them.
Yeah, so it's just like pitiful. But the biggest myth we have to get over, Ed, is the one that we believe that if we work hard enough and keep our nose clean and do everything right, that we could be in the 1%. We could be in the robber class. And it doesn't matter how many people we have to hurt or oppress to get there. And so that's just the situation that we have here in the U.S.
Okay. Yeah, you got me a little discouraged, Cindy. But
but that's why we have to have shows like yours, and that's why we have to have Cindy Sheehan Soapbox, and that's why we have to work really hard to overcome these myths. And I want to tell you, people are struggling. I rode my bike from California.
Oh, we got a break coming up, Cindy.
Okay.
And this is a nice long break. You can rest your voice. You can have some tea, some soup. I'll massage your feet during the break, Cindy. Okay, you stick with me.
How long do I have?
It's a nice long break. It's a good 6-7 minutes.
Okay.
So now have a nice relaxed day, and we'll come back. Cindy Sheehan, a hero, a national treasure, but the mother of a fallen hero. Man sacrificed his life for doing what he thought. Anyway, Cindy Sheehan Soapbox.blogspot.com, Cindy2014.org. She's running for governor of California. If we could win this, we could turn that state upside down. We'll be right back after this. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we're here bringing you the truth and the good news and the good word. We have with us tonight, I want to remind everybody that freedomslips.com is a listener-sponsored station. We take no corporate sponsorship. We don't take any money from the man. We turn down his money. He tries to give it to us, but we turn it down. But we take donations. So if you go to freedomslips.com, you can click on the donate button, and you can keep the station going and keep people like Cindy Sheehan, a true American hero and an American patriot in every sense of the word, on our station here. Cindy's the author of a few books here that I have on my blog. One is called Not One More Mother's Child, Revolution, a Love Story, and I Left My Marbles in San Francisco. She's currently running for governor of California under a socialist party platform with the Peace and Freedom Party. And I'm sure you can contact their website and donate some money over there. But you can get to Cindy's campaign website is cindy2014.org and cindysheehansoapbox.blogspot.com. Cindy, are you back?
I am. Also, if people just put in cindysheehansoapbox.com, it'll direct them to the Blogspot, so they don't have to worry about all that Blogspot stuff.
Yeah, it's true. It seems if you just put in Cindy Sheehan, everything comes up. It comes up right away. Yeah, so you got that going good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm going to be able to go stay with you to the next break. I'm starting to get a sore throat.
Don't worry. You hold on as long as you can. I thank you very much for coming on. We need to hear this. People need to hear this kind of stuff. Now, Barack Obama came to you and tried to get your endorsement?
No, not when he was running for president.
Okay. Then what was your connection to Obama?
Well, after Camp Casey, all of the Democrats wanted to meet with me. And so I had met Barack Obama once in Chicago when I was there doing something with Jesse Jackson. And then And that was before Camp Casey. So that was in early 2005. And then after Camp Casey, he invited me to a meeting with him. And it was really one of my worst meetings I've ever had. And I met with Nancy Pelosi at that time. I met with Harry Reid. I met with Hillary Clinton, and some Republicans also, like John McCain. And
well, let's start with Barack Obama. What was your impressions of him? Why did the meeting go so bad?
Who was married? I'm trying to think. Who was married to Elizabeth Dole? I met with her.
Okay.
She's probably the second worst meeting I had. But the conditions of meeting with Barack Obama were that, and we told every congressperson and every senator that I was going to be there at this time, and if they would like to meet, that we would set up a meeting. It's not like I begged him for a meeting. So he set up a meeting with my the person who was doing my legislative stuff at the time, and he said no press, no staff, none of my staff, none of his staff, and we were just going to meet one-on-one. So, of course, I had just gotten off this big month-long, almost bus ride from Crawford, Texas to Washington, D.C. And I didn't just stay with one of the RVs that left Crawford for Washington, D.C. for that big protest. I would fly from city to city to city to city. So sometimes I'd be on the airplane 2 times a day. And so we got to Washington, D.C. It was that big protest I was telling you where hundreds of thousands of people were there. But the week before and the week after, I was doing these meetings with elected officials. And so I came in, I'm always clean. I always take a shower. I always am presentable. I don't stink or whatever. And I was wearing a pair of jean capris, or we used to call them pedal pushers when I was younger, and a protest shirt, like a peace shirt, like I always do. And the first thing he did was criticize me for the way I was dressed.
Barack Obama did?
Yes. He said, that's really a disrespectful way to come and meet a U.S. senator.
Really?
And, you know what I told him?
What?
I said, well, you're really overdressed for a meeting with a peace activist. And so, so that's what set off our conversation. And he was very careful about what he said and what he didn't say. So careful that those words of him criticizing the way I dress are the only things I remember from that meeting.
Now, what is your impression? Because you got to admit, with Barack Obama, he came out of nowhere. He really
Absolutely.
he was like a media creation and a creation of the Democratic Party, but also too, his paperwork is lacking. His identification papers are lacking. Now, what do you make of that?
Well, I believe that he was, there's a lot of evidence that his stepfather and mother were involved in the CIA.
Yeah.
And she worked for the Ford Foundation or something like that. And so I believe that he was groomed for the position to be the first black president. And just look what happened. Look what happened to dissent when he came into power. You know, even people who don't agree with him are saying we can't protest him because he's black. We don't want to be racist. And I interviewed Cynthia McKinney once.
So did I.
Actually, I interviewed her more than that. But one time when I was interviewing her for my book, Revolution: A Love Story, she told me about how they got through Freedom of Information requests, that they found out that there was talk back in 1965 about, raising up what they called a Negro that didn't excite other Negroes like Malcolm X or Martin Luther King Jr. did, to somebody they would groom him, to be a leader of his people. And it was his, back then it was 65. A leader of his people somebody who would really conform to the dominant paradigm. And the dominant paradigm is, even though we do now have people of color in our government and women in our government, it's still a white male property owning power structure. And so people like Hillary Clinton, she conforms to that. Barack Obama conforms to that. Nancy Pelosi conforms to that. So yeah, I think that he went from state senator to president of the United States in 5 years.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a question, though. Now, I have a fear that they're purposely leaking all this stuff about his phony paperwork and encouraging. I see them plotting a military coup to remove Obama from the White House, and that even people who think that they're awake and aware and they think they're anti-government are going to be applauding those tanks coming down the street because it's to get that guy out. He's a Muslim. He's a socialist. He's a communist.
Right.
Do you see anything like that?
Well, if something like that happened, if he were assassinated or removed from power like that, I would definitely have to assess as how does it serve that dominant power structure? Because how could there be a better friend to Wall Street and the war machine than Barack Obama? Or Israel? How could there be a better friend to Israel than Barack Obama? But then I think that situation you're talking about where people call him a socialist or
Marxist, they call him.
Yeah, it's so funny.
It's amazing.
And, the people who think that he's different from any other president just because of the color of his skin, that makes other smart people, sort of left-wing people, like circle their wagons around him to protect him. And to say that even if people from the left criticize him, then we must also be right. I can't tell you how many times I've heard these people say, "Oh, Cindy, you sound just like the Tea Party." And my criticism of Obama couldn't be from further left. And I don't think people in the Tea Party have the same goals that I do. Just because I criticize Obama doesn't mean that I'm criticizing him with, using the same ideologies of the Tea Party or something like that. So I don't see that happening. I don't see a military takeover of the government.
Because it's not necessary.
It's not necessary, Ed, because every 4 years we have a peaceful transition of power, or 8 years, and the person that gets, I always say the virus that infects the Oval Office serves that same power structure. So it's not necessary, I don't think. What happens is they use all of their institutions to keep us down here fighting about these things.
Oh, yeah, they've got it down to a science where they can have 49% for Romney and 51% for Obama when they got the same exact policy. Right. Yeah, it's just amazing.
And it certainly isn't a mandate when you win by 2%. That's not a mandate. And it's even if we have two parties that opposed each other in a country of 300 million plus, that's not enough.
Ah, boy. Okay. Now, Cindy, we're the same age, you and I. And I think
old.
Yeah, okay. See, I was being nice. Okay. But now the thing is, I get discouraged, but you're still out there fighting on the front lines, running for, governor and stuff. How can you encourage people to get out there and have the energy that you have and have the motivation you have?
Well, I don't know. I just, like, every morning I get up and one of my first thoughts is, what am I going to do today? What's the best use of my time and energy and resources to make the world a better place? And as radical revolutionary activists, I think our action should be to overthrow the government, not to prop it up, not to overthrow the government. That was a bad choice of words. To cause the collapse of the empire.
There you go.
And, yeah, it's not like who's ever listening. I don't have a tank in my garage or weapons or anything.
Well,
but
Clive Bundy's allowed to have.
Yeah,
but we can't.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't think our action should be to reform capitalism. It should be to collapse it. It shouldn't be to, end this war, but we do have to end, war A. It's to end all wars. And that's going to only come through the collapse of the empire. So anyway, and I just, none of anything that I started out to do has been accomplished. So I can't quit while my government is murdering people and oppressing people and torturing people. And while I still have breath, I look at my grandchildren and all the children of the world. And we really, even though it may seem like everything's insurmountable and that we're not going to be successful, I look at the people that have gone before us that never gave up, and I just wonder how bad we would be today if it weren't for them. You know, and so the environment's getting ready to tank on us, and that has to be like all of us, billions of us, have to get out and say, we have to stop this destruction of the environment. And there's so many people out there that are facing down people who want to cut down the rainforest, who are killing themselves rather than plant GMO seeds from Monsanto. Or the tar sands activists. You say I'm in the ditches. These people are literally in the trenches fighting capitalism, fighting the U.S. empire and corporatism. So they give me a lot of, inspiration. And what can I do? The least I can do is to not give up.
And how do you fund yourself and your work right now?
Well, like you said, I have, you've mentioned 3 of my books. I've actually published 7.
Okay.
And so I do a lot of book talks where I go out and sell the books, or people can order them from my website. I get donations at my website, Cindy Sheehan Soapbox. If I have special projects coming up, like I told you I rode my bike from California to Washington, D.C. last year. We raise money, especially for those kinds of activities. If I'm embarking on a book, for example, I'll do maybe like a crowdfunding thing, and then just promise the people who donate a signed copy of the book or whatever. So, and that's how I do it. Or I go out and do speaking events and people take up collections for me and stuff like that. So it's very hand to mouth. I'm a war tax resistor, so I haven't paid my income taxes since my son was killed. So I just try to live as simply as I can. And if you really try to live simply, I don't own anything. I don't own a car or a home. I walk or ride my bike around town. I take the bus or the trains a lot of places. So I just try to be very, very simple. And my needs are simple. And so it's not hard if you do that, if you, live that way. And living simply too is a lot more environmentally and socially friendly.
Do you have any events coming up you'd like to promote?
Everybody can go to my website, cindy2014.org. The primary is June 3rd. I do have some events before June 3rd. I don't have any, activist events until then, but June 6th through the 11th, I think I'll be in Washington, D.C., and it's 5 days for the Cuban 5. People could look up the Cuban 5 if you don't know what their situation is. And so if you're in California, you have to vote June 3rd because that's what they call the jungle primary. There's 15 people running for governor. Only the top 2 vote getters will go to November. So June 3rd could be that could be the last day of me running for governor in 2014. But I can guarantee people, whatever happens on June 3rd, June 4th, I'm still going to get up and think, what's the best thing I can do today to hasten the collapse of the empire, to make the world a better place for my children and grandchildren.
Well, there's a lot of people out there who appreciate what you're doing, Cindy, and we made it to number 5 on TalkStream Live tonight, so we're ahead of Glenn Beck and let me see who else, some of these guys. So we got more people listening to us than listening. And Sean Hannity, we're beating Sean Hannity right now too. So.
Okay. Yay for you, but boo for Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck.
Well, screw him.
They've both been very nasty to me.
I'm sure they have. Hey, real quick, now what about people like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton?
Sellouts. So total sellouts.
Yeah, and I knew Al Sharpton back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And he was a good guy, man, back in those days. I don't know what happened, but I guess it was all that FBI stuff. They had stuff on him.
Yeah. Well, Ed, I worked with so many people after Casey was killed. Move On, people like Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton. But I thought they had the same goals as I did. That was to be anti-empire, but their only thing is to be anti-Republican war.
Right.
And so, but anything the Democrats do. And so I was very I worked so hard with these people and I thought they wanted the same things I did. And it wasn't really their fault because you can't fault a snake for being a snake. But, so I don't have really anything to do with those people anymore. The pro-Democrat, the people who were mostly pro-Democrat, not against all wars. So we're down to a very small, dedicated group of anti-imperial people who have integrity and oppose the wars and oppression no matter who's president. And so I was joking that I wanted Romney to win just so I could see my old friends again. So they would be back out on the streets because, trust me, if it were Romney or McCain doing the things Obama did, you'd see a lot more people opposing them and in the streets.
I got to admit, I was falling for it too. When it was Romney against Obama, I was defending Obama. Even though I knew with every bone in my body, I knew nothing would change.
Well, I was running for vice president that time with the Peace and Freedom Party, so we certainly could have voted for me.
I'm sorry. By
the time that campaign was over, I almost didn't vote for me because I was so upset with my running mate. It was terrible.
Oh, who was your running mate?
Roseanne Barr.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm a little disappointed as well. But listen, her heart's in the right place. I'd say that.
Maybe.
But I think there's a lot of historical forces. If she moved with a MK Ultra type of.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because Cynthia McKinney's doing her a thesis or doctoral thesis on MK Ultra. I can't wait to get her back and get into that. Now, did you pick up
my book? I Left My Marbles in San Francisco is about my run against Nancy Pelosi, and then the afterword is all about the 2012 quote unquote campaign
with Roseanne Barr.
Yes.
Right. Well, what's she doing these days?
I don't know.
Okay. Have you been in this race for governor right now? Have you picked up any endorsements that we would know their name and recognize?
Well, Kashama Sawant, who won for city council, socialist in Seattle, has endorsed the Socialist Alternative, Peace and Freedom Party, of course. There's not, it's really hard when you get to my place on the left, because Jerry Brown, no matter what he does, he's still extremely popular. And all of the people who were beside me in Crawford, Texas, all of the famous people.
Oh no!
Have lined up along those those lines. I'm still friends with Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, and he retweets a lot of my stuff on Twitter. So, so there's still some real radical people who are still, working for change, but it's very rare. And then, of course, we're not raising that much money because we're actually want to equalize the income and wealth, and so people who are wealthy aren't going to support that. So.
And the poor can't donate too much. What can they donate? Except for time and energy.
You're right. And then the poor people are historically, they don't feel like they're represented by government, so they don't get involved in it. And
right.
So I'm like the best candidate that would improve everybody's lives except for the lives of the 1%. But they're not engaged because they're just struggling to survive.
What about like the Pacifica station there in California? Are they still in action? Or are they helping you out?
Well, I have had several interviews on KPFK, which is in LA, and KPFA, which is in Berkeley.
Okay, well, this is our break. I want to thank Cindy Sheehan. Thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you, Ed.
And I wish you could come back after the break, but I'll carry on.
Yeah, I'm losing my voice.
I know. I'll plug all your stuff. Cindy Sheehan, when we come back, I'm going to finish plugging her books. You can find her on my blog, The Opperman Report. I have 3 of her books up there now, but I'll put the rest up. She did 7 books, and she deserves all our support. Support her run for governor, Cindy2014.org. Thank you, Cindy. Okay, welcome back to The Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator, digital forensic investigator, blogger, author, Ed Opperman. Every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we're here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, listener-sponsored radio. So if you want to keep the station going, keep the station afloat, you got to go to freedomslips.com and click on the donate button. We just had with us tonight an hour and a half Cindy Sheehan, the mother of Casey Sheehan, who was killed in the Iraq War. And Cindy went out there and she made it her life's goal to take down the imperialist U.S. government. You could find Cindy Sheehan at cindysheehansoapbox.com or blogspot.com. And you can support her run for governor of California at Cindy2014.org. Now, coming up next week, by the way, if you missed, well, no, you couldn't have missed the show. We just did it. But coming up next week, we're going to have, we have a couple of really interesting shows coming up. We got one is this guy, David Kahn, and he's an expert on the Jim Jones cult. And on Jonestown, Guyana, he's from Northern California there. So he dealt with the Jim Jones when he was in California with his church, and he saw it as a cult. And he has a lot of interesting information about connections between Jim Jones and local politicians and even national politicians like Rosalind Carter, Jimmy Carter's wife. Now, speaking of Cindy Sheehan and Jim Jones and who's that guy who's the governor of California right now? That guy, I forget his name. But the thing is that David Kahn has information about Jim Jones' meeting with the governor of California, who I forget his name. They call him Moonbeam, I forget his name. Anyway, then we have coming up after that, we have these 2 mob guys here from Vegas. They run the Vegas mob tours, and they also run the mob convention. And these are the kind of guys that were around in real life during the whole casino movie and those type of guys. And they're going to have some interesting stories about the local corruption and things like that. Coming up, by the way, too, I have coming up a thing going on. I've been asked to host and moderate a couple of debates here in Nevada. One is for the sheriff's election. We're electing a new sheriff here. And a bunch of the candidates have gotten together. They're going to be holding a debate. and I was asked to moderate this, and we're probably going to get that broadcast both here on Revolution Radio with Hawk Consents, and also too it'll be broadcast on awakeradio.us, and maybe some other outlets too that we're working on as well. So the governor debate. The current governor won't be showing up. It's more like the fringe candidates, but I'll be, hosting it, so it'll be fun. And I'll be sure and mention the station and stuff like that. So let's see. I have an appearance coming up in July. I believe it's July 21st. I'm going to be on TV in Pasadena, California. I forget the name of the show, but I'll keep you posted. And it's about my book, which is called How to Succeed as a Private Investigator. And that book's available on Amazon.com. So that's coming up in July. I'm going to be on local Pasadena TV and then on a local California cable network as well. And from what I understand, they play this thing over and over and over again. So if you miss it the first few times, you'll be able to catch it. That's for sure. We have coming up after the two mob guys, we have returning Dave McGowan. Dave McGowan, I forget the name of his book. One of his books is called Program to Kill, and that's the one we're going to be discussing this time. The other one was called Weird Scenes in the Canyon, about Laurel Canyon and about all the strange activity that went on down in Laurel Canyon with these rock stars back in the 60s and 70s who kind of took on the counterculture movement and kind of derailed things. And if you go back and look at my archives on the Opperman Report YouTube channel and look for the interview with Mark Rudd, the former Weather Underground founder. He was with the Students for a Democratic Society, and then later on he went to found the Weather Underground. And I asked Mark Rudd, because Dave McGowan, one of his theories is that not just was the whole counterculture movement and the rock, the hippie scene, the LSD scene. Dave McGowan feels that was all a government psyop, and it was all set up, and it was programmed, and it was a whole big theater just to kind of derail a revolution in this country. Maybe I'm putting words into his mouth, the revolution part. But I mentioned that to Mark Rudd, what he felt about that. And he was familiar with Dave McGowan's book. And I think if you go back, if you go on the Opperman Report YouTube channel and you look up the Mark Rudd interview, I think that's just about where that interview kind of went south. Okay. Cause, me and Mark, went off on some different tangents. I don't think he was too pleased with me. And we kind of got into a few things, and he had his own very interesting opinion about Barack Obama, who he supported because he felt he was a cool black guy. Okay, last week we had Stephen Jimenez, the author of the Book of Matt, Hidden Truths About the Murder of Matthew Shepard. And I thought that was a fascinating interview. You could find that on the Opperman Report YouTube channel. It's also on the Revolution Radio YouTube channels, but the titles are no longer there. It's kind of hard to search for. But you can find that. And Stephen Jimenez, he did this great book about Matthew Shepard, the Matthew Shepard murder that went on in Laramie, Wyoming in the mid-'90s, and how basically the whole national story that came out of that about how it was a gay-bashing event, and Matthew Shepard was killed because he was gay, and Ellen DeGeneres went on TV crying about it, and Rosie O'Donnell went on TV crying about it, and Bill Clinton passed new legislation, the Matthew Shepard legislation, and it turned out that the whole thing was a big sham, and he wasn't murdered for being gay whatsoever. There was drugs involved. The people who killed him were attacking and beating up straight men that same night. So they weren't out to just attack gay people; they were attacking straights as well. And there was all kinds of different activities involved in that. And I had some information that I was able to share with the author, Stephen Jimenez, about information that I had way back in the 90s when Court TV was covering that trial. Before that, by the way, I'm mentioning these shows because Nighthawk, the owner of the station, he has a promotion going on where what you could do is you can pick a host and you could donate $30 and you can get copies of all their old shows. So I'm not sure if these shows are going to be on the CD or what. I don't know how it works, to tell you the truth. But I'm just telling you about the old shows. So if you want to donate that $30, Hawk splits it with the host, and I get like $12 out of it. And I'll be honest with you, I could really use the money right now because I'm in the midst of huge litigation, custody litigation with my daughter. And a lot of you out there know how close I am with my daughter. It's been a devastating situation for me. And I'm trying to rally up the troops and the wagons here to help me out as much as you guys can. Before that, we had a few weeks back, 418, we had Ramona Africa, who is the only living survivor of a police attack on a group of revolutionaries like myself, like Cindy Sheehan, like Cynthia McKinney, and others that we've had on the station here, like Lorenzo Kumboa Irvin. But Ramona Africa was a revolutionary that was living in a row house in Philadelphia, a group called MOVE. There was this group back in the 80s, and they were attacked by the police, and they were bombed. They were set on fire. And, I was just corrected, by the way, by my host, Ann Eulalie, that the author I had last week was not Jimenez. His name was Jimenez. And I apologize to Mr. Stephen Jimenez. But back to Ramona Africa, whose name I can pronounce, okay? She was the last surviving member of MOVE. And not only is this a woman here who has her butt on the line, she's a revolutionary. They tried to burn her alive. When she tried to escape from the fire, they tried to shoot her and kill her. And then they threw her in prison for 9 years, okay? And these are the kind of people I'm trying to bring you, people that are real, actual revolutionaries, people that are in resistance against the oppression that we're under right now. And if you notice, the people I bring you have been in prison. Okay, they're not out there shills and talking. These are people that have put their butts on the line, and they did time in prison. Another guy I want to bring up is Lorenzo Kumboa Irvin, who was a member of the original Black Panther Party for self-defense back in the 60s and the 70s. Incredible man. This man is an elder statesman of the revolution. A fascinating show. You want to go back and look that up and get that on the archives, or get Hawk to sell it to you if you can. Okay, however that works. And here's a guy who was they tried to frame him. They said he was trying to firebomb the local courthouse or some trumped up charge such as that. And what he did was, well, he had no choice. He had to hijack a plane. Okay, so he got his hands on a hand grenade and a handgun. And he got on a plane. This is back when people were hijacking planes to Cuba all the time. So he went along with that theory. And he hijacks this plane down to Cuba. He gets to Cuba, and, Castro doesn't want to hear about it, man. Castro puts him in jail down there. But then they send him on his way on a regular commercial flight. We were making jokes about it. He's on the flight with the peanuts and the beer and all the drinks and stuff like that, drinking a martini on his way. He thought he was going to Algiers. Because back in those days, it was a haven for revolutionaries in this country. You can go to Algiers, and they would give you sanctuary if you were under a government prosecution and persecution here in this country. So anyway, he headed over there, but they detoured him, and he wound up in the Czech Republic. And the U.S. Embassy came and kidnapped him. They held him captive there in the U.S. Embassy in the Czech Republic. And then he's telling this fascinating story. He was able to escape from these guys. And first they were going to shoot at him, but they said, no, we can't shoot at him. So they tried to run him over with their car, running through the streets of the Czech Republic, trying to run this guy over. So here's a guy, you should have a movie about him. They brought him back to the United States. They finally got a hold of him. They grabbed him, they threw him back in the pit of hell down in the United States. And they gave him 2 life sentences. But there was a big groundswell movement of support for this guy, and they were able to get his conviction, get him out, released. And now here he is. He's released. He's in his 70s, and he's still down there in Memphis, organizing protests, resisting oppression, and fighting the good fight. And these are the kind of people that we need to support. Then we had a week before that, we had Mark Rudd, who's a former member of the Weather Underground. And it was a very interesting interview. A lot of people felt that he was a little arrogant with me and a little bit rude with me, okay? And I have trouble disagreeing with that. Okay. I'm a fan of his blog, and different things about him there. And I support anybody who put their butt on the line to resist oppression, which he did at one time in his life. But if you just want to look at the history of the people I'm talking about here, this little group we're putting forward here, you got Cindy Sheehan, right, who lost her son. Who is living now practically in poverty, as she says. She's a tax resistor and kind of walking around on foot and fighting the good fight still, out there. And then you have Ramona Africa. They threw her in prison for 9 years. Then you got Lorenzo Camboa Irvin. They threw him in prison for 15 years. And you got Mark Rudd. Well, they never threw him in prison, And here he comes out now. He wants to be a liberal Democrat, and he wants to support people like Barack Obama. So you got to wonder where people are coming from, where they're going. And that's one of the ways that I look. One of the things I always wonder about people is where's your money coming from? And who's supporting you right now? And if you notice, someone like Cindy Sheehan has no problem telling you how they make a living. And we had we had Cynthia McKinney, the former Congresswoman. Cynthia McKinney, man, she's a beautiful woman. I love that woman. And she's doing her doctorate thesis right now on MKUltra. And she was telling me off the air and on the air, we talked quite a bit about all fascinating stuff, Freedom of Information Act, the request she got about different assassinations in the United States and stuff. And we're going to be bringing her back often. She's a great guest. And she's someone out there as well. She hasn't been thrown in prison yet, but there's always time for that, right? She's a great guest, and I can't wait to have her back. And she's a lovely woman off the air, just full of love and a good-hearted person. We had my man, Russ Dizdar. He came on the second hour after Cynthia McKinney. And here's a guy, man, he's a prison chaplain. He's a good Christian man. He's a pastor of a church. He's an activist as well. He runs around doing seminars, and his whole thing is anti-Satanism. Man, this guy's out there fighting satanic cults, literally, okay, with prayer, with digging up bones, digging up evidence for the police department. He's organizing a big thing going on right now in New York City in May. And Russ Dizdar is getting together with Maury Terry, the author of The Ultimate Evil. He's the author who first exposed the Process Church being involved with the Son of Sam murders. And also to Dale Griffiths, who's testified in the West Memphis 3 trial. He's also going to be there in New York. And the idea is that this group's going to get together and tour all the crime scenes and tour all the occult activity scenes, the scenes where they did these occult sacrifices and rituals and things. And I was invited to go down there in May with this group. And I even tried to pitch it to different media organizations and try and get it filmed in a documentary or do a book about it or something like that. The problem is, though, with my situation, it came up. I cannot fund this right now. If somebody wants to come out and sponsor this, let's do it, man. Let's get down there. We'll film it. I have a documentary film people that I can contact. I just can't fund it. And the people I did contact who can fund it, it seems are not interested. Okay, before that, we had Bill Dean, author of Smooth Criminal. And he was an interesting guy. He had a lot of good credentials in his resume there. Wrote this interesting book about a criminal he met one day. And another guy, too, that criminal also, too, hijacked a plane to Cuba. And he had a whole bunch of adventures there to go over. Okay, we had Daniel Hopsicker, investigative journalist, and a journalist, and he has a blog called Mad Cow Morning News. Now, Daniel Hopsicker actually lived when everyone's familiar with the story of Barry Seal, who was part of the whole Mena, Arkansas drug smuggling operation, CIA, Iran, Contra, all that stuff. Daniel Hopsicker actually lived in his home with Barry Seal's widow after Barry Seal was killed. Okay, and he was working for Barry Seal's widow, trying to dig up this information, find out what the hell happened, what was Barry Seal involved with, and what was he doing, and how did he get killed? Very fascinating story, and it's very interesting. And we have a host on our station here, Gene Tip Tatum, Gene Chip Tatum. Trying to say that 3 times fast, but Gene Chip Tatum was also one of these guys. Flying around, smuggling coke with Barry Seal. And here you got Barry Seal's dead, and Gene Chip Tatum has a show on the station. And it's just funny how life, works out like that, But Daniel Hopsicker was the guest. He has great information about the whole Mena, Arkansas, and all that drugs, Iran-Contra stuff. But also, too, he's done great investigative journalist work on Muhammad Atta. And Muhammad Atta and the 9/11 hijackers and stuff like that. And he has an interview. We didn't get a chance to talk about it because toward the end of the interview, we just ran out of time. I want to have him back because I like him. But at the end, it was just really fascinating because he interviewed Muhammad Atta's stripper girlfriend. This girl who has stories about Muhammad Atta using coke and money coming out of his ears and organizational stuff like that. You know, if you want to go to Mad Cow Morning News, and you can find it on YouTube and find the interviews with Muhammad Atta's girlfriend. And those are fascinating interviews, and I take my hat off to Daniel Hopsicker for those interviews. We had another guest on, Diane Diamond from Court TV fame. Okay, and she wrote a book called Be Careful Who You Love, Inside the Michael Jackson Case. And I have my own connections to the Michael Jackson case. I knew some people involved with that. And I was able to share that with Diane Diamond. And also, too, you know, we didn't get a chance to touch on it too much, but Al Sharpton, the people who I knew that were involved, who were witnesses to Michael Jackson child molestation, this was before the whole Jordy Chandler story came out. And because they worked on the tour that was run by Mr. Frances, who was this mafia guy in New York City, and Al Sharpton, who ran this tour together. And they told me that Michael Jackson was caught molesting little boys, and the whole thing was covered up by the people that ran this tour. And very fascinating story. So I knew about Michael Jackson molesting kids way before it came out in the news. And everybody knows about how I knew Al Sharpton, you know, and it came out recently about Al Sharpton running around wiretapping people. I'm totally convinced of that, and I believe I'm on those tapes as well because I know a lot of those people that he was taping, and I also knew Al Sharpton at the time. Okay, wow. Okay, so that was a whole fascinating thing. And Diane Diamond, we talked about other stuff too, like Anthony Pellicano. And how Anthony Pellicano was this guy. Anthony Pellicano was this guy. He was this private investigator in California. And this guy, they called him the PI to the stars. And he was running around wiretapping everybody. He had this equipment that he got where he could wiretap people's phones without going to their location and attaching any equipment onto their phone lines or their trunks or anything. It's just amazing equipment. And he encrypted it all too as well. So he's working for all the biggest lawyers out there in California and Hollywood and stuff like that, getting involved in all these big giant cases. He's in prison right now. Okay, I guess, and he was involved in OJ, and he was involved in threatening Diane Diamond because he was working for Michael Jackson at that time. So he's in prison right now. They busted him for wiretapping, and he had some C4 explosives, and I think he had a hand grenade as well. I'm not sure if it's the same hand grenade that Kambawa Irvin had, or from the same source or whatever. Possibly. I'm the thread that weaves through all these different cases here. We did a special report on one Sunday afternoon, I believe it was. Might have been Saturday afternoon, with James Fetzer and Oli Demigard. About the JFK assassination, and we played these recordings that they had with this witness. It was some very interesting stuff, and I encourage people to go back and look for that. If you go back and look for Opperman Reports Special, James Fetzer, Oli Demigard, JFK assassination, you could find it up on YouTube. And the tapes are very fascinating. This woman seems to believe that she knows these assassins and these serial killers and stuff like that were involved in many different assassinations. And I would encourage people to listen to that and use your own judgment. I'm a big fan of a guy named Scott Michaels, who was the producer and director and narrator of a documentary called 6 Degrees of Helter Skelter. This is one of my most popular interviews, and everyone loves this guy. He's just a fascinating guy. And he runs a tour in California called the Dearly Departed Tour, where he takes you around California on his bus and the different locations of high-profile crimes and stuff like that. Very interesting guy. I wish we could have gotten into more trivia about the Helter Skelter and Charles Manson, but he just had so many fascinating stories about the Hollywood and celebrities and murders and stuff over there, and really enjoyed them. We had Steve Odell, who's a former homicide detective who wrote a book called The Black Dahlia Avenger. And that was a great show. I really enjoyed him as well. And he has some fascinating information about how he believes his father, Dr. Hodel, was the Black Dahlia murderer. And he had some really good information. And I'd like to check that out. Like I said, we have coming back up, we have Dave McGowan, who wrote Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, Programmed to Kill. Let's see. We're running out of steam here. It's been a long day. Let's see. Well, those seem to be all my big shows. Last year, you want to look up the ones with Jim Rothstein. Jim Rothstein right now currently is a mayor of a small town there in Minnesota, and a fascinating guy. He was the detective in charge of the Son of Sam investigation in New York City. He also arrested Frank Sturgis when Frank Sturgis was on his way to assassinate Marita Lorenz, who was the girlfriend of Fidel Castro. And Jim Rothstein is a fascinating guy. We're from the same town. We know the same people. We know the same stories. When I talked to him off the air, he sent me all kinds of stuff off the air too, man. All kind of police reports, really information. We got to get him back on the show. He was one of my most popular guests, Mayor Jim Rothstein, and everyone really loved him. And I think we had a very good rapport. I only wish that we could play our conversations that we have off the air. If we could play that on the air, because that's some really good stuff. We had criminal profiler Pat Brown, and we talked about the West Memphis 3 and the BTK killer. Oh, well, guys, it's been real. Okay, we'll be back next week with the Opperman Report and fun games and surprises. Our guest is going to be David Kahn. We're going to be talking about Jim Jones and hopefully keep it on subject. But I enjoyed the show this week, guys. I love you all. Keep me in prayer. And visit the blog, The Opperman Report. And we'll see you next week.